This is the notes video for Chapter 1, Lesson 7, and you need to be on page 86. The first thing we're going to practice is identifying points and ordered pairs. We have already worked a little bit with graphing ordered pairs, but we've only done quadrant 1, which are all positive numbers. The coordinate plane, however, when you connect a vertical number line with a horizontal number line at 0. That is the origin, 0, 0. When you do connect those two number lines, it creates actually 4 quadrants. It's really important that we memorize this fact that this section is quadrant 1, and that if we go to the left, that's quadrant 2, below would be quadrant 3, and then finally quadrant 4. So if we think about this as a clock, if this were a clock, then we're going counterclockwise. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Now, quadrant 1 are only positives, and we already have learned that in an ordered pair, we always write the x value first, then the y value. So for quadrant 1, a point would look like a positive x and positive y. For quadrant 2, however, you'll notice this is the x-axis. All of these are going to be negative numbers. So for quadrant 2, the x values will all be negative. But in quadrant 2, you'll see the number line up here, these are all positive. So the y value will be positive. And this is also stated over here in the chart as well. So quadrant 1, positive, positive. Quadrant 2, negative, positive. So in quadrant 3, you'll notice that all of the x values will be negative, but all of the y values also are going to be negative. So this is actually across at a diagonal from quadrant 1, which is all positive, and then quadrant 3 is all negative. Okay? So that being said, we can kind of predict what quadrant 4 is going to be. If the x is negative in quadrant 2, over here you'll notice the x's are going to be positive. So quadrant 4, the x's are positive. And of course, if the opposite holds true, if this is a positive 7, these will be negative. So do you see down here on this number line, those are going to be negative y values. All right, so please study this chart and study this picture, because these always follow this pattern. Quadrant 1 is always all positive. Quadrant 2 always has a negative x value and a positive y value. Quadrant 3 always has all negative values, x and y. And quadrant 4 always has positive x's and negative y's. So we're going to continue identifying points and labeling their ordered pair numbers. This first example says to identify the ordered pair that names point C. So over here we're going to see this is point C, and then we're going to identify the quadrant in which it's located. So really the best thing for you to do right now is what we mentioned just a moment ago that we have to memorize, and that's where the quadrants are. So I'm going to go ahead and label all 4 quadrants. So we have, this is quadrant 1, this is quadrant 2. Instead of using Roman numerals, I'm just going to use numbers. This is quadrant 3, and this is quadrant 4. Okay. If I did use Roman numerals, I'll show you in a moment what that would look like. However, okay, so now we have to identify C. So I know that it's going to be x value and then y value. And if I go along this number line, 1/2, 1, 1.5. So the very first value lines up to 1 and 1/2. and then I'm going to go up. So this is the positive part of the y number line, and so 1/2 and 1, and that's going to be positive 1. So that fits quadrant 1, positive, positive. And then we have over here, that's true. So point C is 1 and 1/2 and 1. All right, you may sometimes, or most of the time actually, you're going to have the quadrants labeled with Roman numerals. This would be 1, this would be quadrant 2, this is quadrant 3, and of course with Roman numerals, instead of 4 lines, we're going to write the number 5, or the Roman numeral 5, and then put the 1 on this side for, that means 5 minus 1, which is 4. Okay. In the second example, they're still using this same coordinate plane. So it's asking again for us to identify the point that's located at -1 and 1/2 and -1. And then we're going to identify the quadrant. Of course, I've already labeled the 4 quadrants, 1, 2, 3, and 4. At this time, instead of giving us the point as a letter, they're giving us the actual ordered pair. So the x value is what we're going to locate first. So this is -1.5. I come up to the origin 0. Always start at 0. I go over to -1.5, and then I'm going to go down -1. So -1/2, -1. So this is the point that I am looking for right here. So the answer is going to be B. I'm going to make that something we can actually see. Okay, so make that a little bit darker. The point that's matches this ordered pair is B, and the quadrant is going to be 3. Okay, now we're going to practice graphing ordered pairs. And again, this is something we've already done, but only in quadrant 1. So the only difference now is we're going to be looking at negative numbers as well and doing all 4 quadrants. So it's asking us to graph point M, and it says that it's -3 and +4. So we always start at the origin, and that's 0, 0. And then we're going to go over -3. Always go along the x-axis first, and then we're going to go up +5, and you can see they've already placed the point M right here. Okay, so now it's asking us to graph point N, which was -2 and 1/2 and -3 and 1/2. So again, we start at the origin, and we're going to go over to -2, and then halfway between -2 and -3 is -2.5. Then we're going to go down to -3 and 1/2, which is halfway between -3 and -4, and this is where point N is going to be. And of course, that is actually going to be in quadrant. Okay, if this is quadrant 1, this is quadrant 2. That point has been graphed in quadrant 3, and this final one over here is quadrant 4.